This is the E-commerce Edge podcast with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is my pleasure to welcome our next incredible guest, and he is Mr. Rob GARF, and he is the head of strategy and insights at Cordial. Welcome to the podcast, Rob.
Hey, Jason, it's great to be here.
It's awesome to have you along for the ride with me today. Before we get into Cordial and what you guys do over there at Cordial, why don't you tell me and the audience how you came to be in this space, this wonderful world of e-com, omni-channel, digital retail, etc. Because if I was to look at your background, lots of leadership roles, lots of investment roles, not a lot of tech roles. I have to go back a little ways to get back to a tech role. So what sucked you into this beautiful industry?
Yeah. I'm a retail guy at heart. I actually grew up working in my father's warehouses where he led supply chains for some of the largest retailers in the country. So I just got to understand the inner workings and the operational cadence of getting product to the stores. It was really fun. I didn't wake up one day and say, that's what I want to do. I want to be in my father's footsteps, but it just really got ingrained. And since then, I've really just sat on all sides of the retail table, from actual practitioner back in the day, helping Lids, the specialty hat retailer, do some really innovative cross-channel initiatives, which weren't even invented at a time, like buy online, pick up at store, and creating endless aisle within the physical footprint, to industry analyst, strategy consultant, and software executive. And I happened upon Cordial about a year ago and just was really impressed with both the people and the tech, and couldn't help but join. And it's been a great ride ever since.
Amazing. What a journey. And it's interesting because nearly at 600 episodes now of the podcast, none of us have the exact same journey into digital. We have a variety of backgrounds, histories, interests, chance meetings. Most people feel like they fell into digital in some way or fashion that wasn't necessarily highly engineered. They didn't necessarily go to university for digital or e-com, and your story really resonates with me, and I think the audience as well, in that this industry is very welcoming to non-digital people, meaning that you don't necessarily have to come from a massive digital pedigree to find a home in digital. And there are analogs for almost every other role out there in the industry, but that can be found in digital. So if you're a creative, if you're an analyst, it doesn't really matter what your bent is, you'll probably be able to find something in digital that tickles your fancy and that you can contribute to. So super cool story. Now,
Jason, if I could interject for a sec, because it just really prompted a thought there. I like to say I sit at the intersection of retail, consumer, and technology. And hearing you say what you just did, that applies to any industry, if you really think about it. And what I have found over the last, especially 5 years, particularly in the onset of COVID, is retail has almost become a verb or a strategy, in that I talk to heads of hospitality companies or heads of travel and even financial services, and they're trying to figure out how to do retail. Because at the end of the day, it's thinking about the consumer and working backwards. And to your point, digital has been now really ingrained in what the consumer experience is and what let's call it broadly, the brand or operator experience, just to help break down the friction between what people are trying to accomplish and getting it done. In retail, it means, hey, I need to find a product and I need it in the most efficient and quality way possible.
yeah, we were talking about off air just before I started recording about this Elgato 4K webcam that I bought while I was in New York a couple of weeks ago for Shoptoberfest. And one of the other podcasters that was podcasting from the event, he showed me his, and he had it set up because he was going to do some video podcasting from the event. And he was like, "This thing's amazing. I had a friend recommend it to me, and it was one of the best purchases I've ever made. It's really cheap, but it's really good quality." And so I jumped online, of course, as you do. And I was like, okay, quickly on my phone, I compared what Amazon had, what its price was, whatever. And then I just tried looking at Best Buy locally in New York City, and I actually even asked ChatGPT, where's the best place to get this product in New York City if I want it right now? And so they listed a couple of places that would likely have it in stock. And I went to one of those that was recommended. I had never heard of that store chain before, but in hindsight, I look back on it and I did some reading about this chain, and apparently they're one of the biggest electronics retailers in the United States. And I never even heard of them before, which is weird, but just goes to show that the riches are in the niches, as they say, but they made it quite difficult to purchase through them. You couldn't buy online if you didn't have a local US cell phone number. So you couldn't even create an account. You couldn't buy online. You couldn't reserve online, buy in store. You couldn't buy online, pick up in store. So basically, without a phone number, I had to wait on hold with customer service because I didn't want to go all the way across town.
Mm-hmm.
They only had one unit left in stock at that store that was nearest to me, and I didn't want to go all the way across town, pay whatever I was going to pay on an Uber to go across town, only to find that it had been sold by the time I got there. And so the customer service team said, the only way we can do this for you, our system simply does not allow us to put holds on products where the customer doesn't have a local phone number. The only thing we can do for you is put you through to the store manager, and at his or her discretion, they can make a choice to hold it for you without a US number, and they'll take your contact details down. So they did. They put me through, waited on hold at the store to speak to the store manager, and the store manager was kind enough to go ahead and put it on hold for me. But the amount of time I spent, like 45 minutes of my time in advance trying to jump through the hoops of spending money with this company. And so I guess I said all that to say that there are still some retail experiences out there that are baffling. And it's wild that some of the biggest retailers in the United States today still have a really crappy customer experience under certain conditions, right?
Yeah, I have to say that you are probably in the minority in terms of the amount of time you invested and the patience and fortitude that you expended. Research that I've done throughout my career has consistently shown that consumers will stop shopping a particular brand after 3 negative experiences. So you think about it in the baseball analogy, 3 strikes, you're out. I think
Wow.
they're being nice. I know after 2, I get really cranky. So the fact that you actually were able to go through all that you did says a lot, and most people won't. So it is amazing that many retailers still have friction in their shopping process. It would be interesting to know if this retailer, whether it was a technical limitation, whether it was some sort of policy or incentive, or it could have been that they were trying to avoid shrink and really leading into loss prevention. I don't know, but it shouldn't be that apparent to you. They should make it easier for you. And congratulations. You look great, by the way. So I'm glad.
I am using that. I'm using the Elgato face cam right now to record this video. And I have to say, it is definitely better than the inbuilt laptop camera on the video that normally comes out from my laptop camera. I can see it straight away. It's even clearer from my side as well. So it's definitely, I think, worth the investment. But yeah, it was even my wife said, how bad do you want this camera?
Because we wanted it.
I was like, I'm only in the US for the short amount of time. These guys have it locally. They've only got one left in stock. So if I don't get it, then I'm gonna have to wait till I come back to the US, because it was like twice as expensive through Amazon Mexico, which Amazon Mexico could get it for me, but it was like twice as expensive, plus import duties and all that. So I was like, it's just easier for me to get yes, it's a ton of extra effort now, but it's less effort than when I get back to Mexico. So yeah, it's kind of pick your poison, right? Yeah. That's just the way that it worked out. But yeah, now when we think about what Cordial does in terms of helping to ease this friction for consumers, and for the intelligence and insights that it brings to the merchants, whether they're pure play online, whether they're omni, whatever it may be. In all transparency for you and the audience, I've never worked with Cordial before. I've never deployed the platform. I've never even had a demo of the platform, so I have to go by what's on the tin, so to speak, on the website. And it would appear to me that you guys are almost like a hybrid CDP platform mixed with a personalization platform, but not in the way that most merchants would traditionally think of that. They would oftentimes see that through, say, a search merchant personalization platform on the website that manages the search experience, manages product recommendations experience, maybe even manages the dynamic menuing experience to personalize that to the customer. And maybe that would tie in and send some data off to something like a Klaviyo or something like that, or some other dedicated CDP platform or something like that. But it feels like you are focusing more on the messaging journey than the necessarily directly the on-site experience in the moment.
Should take you on the road. You did a better job of explaining it than I did. Awesome. And I appreciate you teeing this up. The way I like to put it, so if you back up and just zoom out for a second, Cordial is a unified marketing platform. And so we've been around for 10 years. And the way I like to put it is if I see somebody at a cocktail party or a wedding and they ask me what we do, which I did this past week, and I try to make it as easy as explaining it to them or my mother-in-law. And so the way I do it is put it in the context of the brand and the shopper. So we help retailers like Abercrombie and Fitch, Levi's. We help LLB and PacSun and Boot Barn. So these are both direct to consumer, but also large, complex, multi-channel retailers. First, like you said, really understand who the consumer is, because they're leaving breadcrumbs every time they engage the retailer's brand in terms of their profile, their preferences, and most importantly, their intent, the context and the memory of what they're trying to accomplish, where they're trying to accomplish, and how quickly they want to accomplish it. And we take that information, that intelligence, and we're able to personalize the engagement at render time. So at the moment that the consumer is gauging, first that started for us in email, move quickly to SMS, push, now RCS, and we do have clients exposing that on their website and call center and even in their store. That is happening dynamically based on what the latest thing, the consumer has told us or the brand about themselves. And that engagement, obviously through that personalized engagement, increases the customer lifetime value and ultimately revenue. So it's a really cool platform. I joined, like I said, about a year ago, and it's been an amazing ride. And the first thing I learned when actually I was thinking of joining the company is in talking to our clients was the platform just works. And that's an important thing in this day and age for a client to really be able to say an enterprise software platform actually works. And what I learned about that is I just talked about the customer experience portion of what we do, but we also impact the marketer's experience because we have an intuitive application powered by AI. So we're creating such operational efficiency that wasn't able to be accomplished on legacy platforms.
And so do you see yourself as a drop-in end-to-end replacement for something like a Klaviyo or a Dot Digital or an ECOMMERCE type of a platform? Or do you work with those platforms to actually do the mail sending and the message presentation layer, and you send them all of your data to personalize the messages that they send? Or are you in control of the actual message sending or presentation layer as well? You are a turnkey drop-in solution for the whole kit and caboodle.
It's both, but we recognize retailers don't often replace their entire MarTech stack overnight. Some want to. So we play really nicely in the sandbox, whether meaning the brand wants us to be the sender of the message or the intelligence behind it, or even the data that fuels it. I've been in the space for a while, and it's impossible to look at what we do in isolation or any individual vendor, technology provider in isolation. And so really the broader context, Jason, I think it's a really important question you're asking, because I often, coming from my analyst role by working at a company that ultimately got bought by Gartner, is where do we fit in the stack? What category are we in? And that's essentially, I think, where you're going with it. And what I mean by in terms of looking at the full context and the broader environment we live in is retailers, brands, like you said, could be financial services companies, hospitality, and so on, also invested in specific solutions to solve a specific problem by a specific channel. So that was awesome for the time. We need to be really good at triggering emails. Awesome. Let's go for a best of breed solution there. We need to engage with our customers through SMS. Let's go for a best of breed there. We need to figure out all this data that's all over the place. Let's look for a CDP solution there. What we are finding almost, it's never good to be totally definitive. So I'm going to say a vast majority of the time, retailers are looking to consolidate their legacy MarTech stack where they did make these disparate investments. And so one newer client of ours was looking, and now they are to consolidate 5 different applications in the MarTech stack onto Cordial, right? From data to intelligence to the various channels, all coming together. So what does that do? Really 3 key benefits. First of all, they're reducing their subscription costs. It's just logical rather than having to manage 5 different technology providers, bringing it to one. Second is they are creating significant operational efficiency by having one interface to manage all of the channels dynamically. We don't care, we care, but when you're creating a message, it's not about the message, it's about the customer and working backwards. So we have one platform with a single version of the truth around data, product, customer, channel, all sorts of other data, elements and attributes to drive that. And the third, because of our AI, we call it Cordial Edge, we're able to personalize that engagement and determine what's the best channel, what's the best time, and what's the best makeup of that message based on that consumer and their intent. So that's a long answer, hopefully not too long, to say we do it all, but we also are sensitive to where the not shopper or consumer, where the retailer is in their evolution in their MarTech strategy and tech stack.
Yeah, and I guess that would mean that, your natural competitors or potentially collaborators in the market, depending on where they're at in your integration roadmap, they could either be a marketing automation platform, they could either be a CDP platform, but correct me if I'm wrong, you won't necessarily do the on-site search merchant personalization piece. So you're not going to replace a Nosto. You're not going to necessarily replace the platforms that don't do any of the message sending and don't have any of the message pushing capabilities. I guess you would play nice with something like a Nosto or any of the other on-site search merchant personalization, a Constructor, an Algolia, or whatever it might be, because you don't provide the on-site search capability, as far as I know. And I don't think you have like the product rec panels on like the home, the category, the cart page, whatever it might be. So I'm guessing you send data to those types of platforms to further personalize the experiences they are providing. Am I characterizing that accurately?
That I think is fairly accurate based on where we've been. I want to comment on 2 aspects. One is you've totally captured what's happening in this market, which is this compression of those that manage, when I talk about that in terms of the categories of technology, those that manage the channels, those that manage the data, and those that manage the intelligence. Those traditionally have been different. And they're all compressing because that's what the retailer wants for the various reasons I said. We traditionally have come out of the email space, but our founders at the time, I can take no credit for this, but it was a really prescient thesis at the time, was we are going to build the architecture that has our data and intelligence layers abstracted from the channel. The channel that we started with was email, but when we started to then innovate on more channels, it wasn't a disparate or separate stack. It was all leveraging the same data intelligence. So we do have some clients, it's not our, I would say, primary go-to-market focus, that do want the data and intelligence engine that is fueling the email to show up on the website. It certainly is the recommendations that are showing up within the email. And so some say, why don't we have those same recommendations show up on the website? But there are plenty of best of breed. I would say plenty. There are some really good that come to the top, best of breed on site that focus on that in totality. So as I mentioned before, we play really nicely with them. We actually have some partners in that space when it makes most sense for the client. It's something that, given this consolidation, we'll see probably more and more of the rationalization of that category as well.
Makes sense. So I'm guessing that something like a Wands AI or something like that would be a more direct competitor in that sense, because it feels like there is a growing sense, and you even said it yourself, there is a growing sense that IT sprawl, shadow IT, merchants feeling like they're being nickel and dime to death. They feel like, oh my God, I've got 86 SaaS subscriptions and it's eating me alive. And our systems, some of them talk to each other, some of them share data, some of them don't. So maybe we've now got a data lake or a data warehouse somewhere that we then have Power BI sitting on top of, or something like that we're trying to run analysis on top of, cohort analysis, cohort creation. segmentation, etc. We're trying to do that on a customized basis because we have data coming in from so many disparate systems. And there is this understanding that I call it SaaS-lash. It's SaaS backlash. And it feels like a lot of businesses are realizing that the more, even if we have to sacrifice small ways, that sacrifice, if every single platform that we ran was individual, best of breed, composable, and separately integrated, maybe we would gain an extra 2, 3, 4, 5% in terms of performance. But what we give up, right, is a massive cost. Like that is that from a maintainability, from a tech debt perspective, from an integration perspective, from a time to value perspective, we just give up so much to have that extra nth degree of data and insights, for example, that we will give up some of that to gain back a much more consolidated IT infrastructure, something where we'll actually use like 80 to 90% of the functionality instead of a stack that's best of breed, but we use 10% of the functionality, and that's the value that we get out of it. But we're paying 100% of the price, we're getting 10% of the value. So it feels like pretty much everywhere that we can see across the entirety of the commerce stack, including suite-based commerce platforms making a rapid comeback. But for a long time, monoliths were considered a bad word, but in the new world where there's modular monoliths, where they're modular, they're componentized, but they're pre-integrated and they're all native. And more importantly, they're decomposable, which means you can remove a component without breaking the entire platform if you decide at some later date to plug in a best of breed piece of technology because it's so good you can't say no. It feels like that's where pretty much the whole of the industry is headed right now, not just in the area of personalization.
Wow. Yeah. This is an interesting pendulum swing that we're seeing here. And I've tracked it over the last couple of decades. Or the last 5 years, I would say probably 5 years, it's been the best of breed. Let's look for components and let's pull it together through industry standards and take over the management of the technology as much as possible. And what we are finding now is a swing back to, wow, let's look for consolidation. And oh, by the way, let's not try to be tech companies. There are tech companies like Cordial, where all of our R&D go into best-in-class capabilities that are great for the entire ecosystem. And we have the economies of scale to make it happen. We're not alone. Like, we're just a really interesting example of where that works. And so we are seeing that pendulum swing. And what is causing that is a couple of things. First of all, coming into this year, for the first quarter, it really felt like a couple of early months of COVID, which was because of the tariffs, retailers pressed pause. They said, we got to figure out our costs and we got to really figure out how we really hone in a lot of the variable ones. And we got to figure out where there's a lot of leakage in our technology portfolios. And so there's a lot of pause on new investment. What we're finding now is that after they've gone through the exercise and realized, I don't know how many you said, over 80, but that's not far from the truth. Research we did just on MarTech alone, they have over 5 applications, and it's hovering more like 10 to manage just in the MarTech space. On the e-commerce side, it's closer to 15 from research I've done in the past. So it's a hodgepodge of applications that cost a lot of money or are difficult to reuse. So now we're seeing, and we feel like Cordial and just a few others are in a unique space, again, given our architecture that we can handle all different channels, and we're ready for those that come about, including use ChatGPT as an example to find the electronics retailer near you in New York, which will become and already is becoming a key channel. The other piece to, Jason, to this is what retailers, what brands have found amidst all of this frenzy on individual applications, they lost sight of the customer. They lost sight of who the customer is and what they want and how to activate that information in real time. And that is a huge issue in that we just actually released some great research called Battle for Attention, when AI is totally redefining the marketing funnel. And what we found is 60% of respondents, almost 2/3, 60% of respondents said they don't trust their data. Like, they don't, how can you do anything that you're talking about? And I know you're advising clients all day long about data, about customer experience, about overall customer profitability. how do you get there when you don't trust your data? And so that's another reason of figuring out how we get our arms around all the customer data, even if they're sitting in different systems, but have a way to index it so that you can understand their intent in the moment and be able to activate on that dynamically based on whatever channel makes most sense for the customer.
And how are you dealing with we haven't heard from Google in a while. For a while there, it was looking like they were going to kill off the third-party cookies. I think that's been pushed into the never now because no one in the industry has yet found a better solution than cookies. That's the reality for identification, for tracking, and the customer experience with cookies is pretty bad. The consent screens and everything else are getting ever longer to where they're not just a strip at the bottom of the page. They're a full screen takeover now, and GDPR is out of control. The consent requirements in California out of control. So the reality is that the personalized customer experience of today is really badly broken in terms of the UX. And so I don't want to get into a political argument here, but it feels the politicians are pushing ever more invasive experiences on customers in the name of privacy, in the name of consent and everything else. And my argument is customers don't care. They care about convenience first and foremost than anything else. I can't remember the last time I said no to a consent screen. If I really wanted to browse a website, if I really wanted to buy off a website, if I really wanted to do those things, I'd never say no, no matter how onerous that that wall of text that hit me was. And I wonder where this lands in terms of, people being able to control their own data, people being able to control who it's shared with in some sort of centralized manner so that I don't have to now go out and every single website I visit have to click this damn consent banner every single time I visit the website. And then my consent times out after 30 days. So if I go back again after 30 days, I got to re-click the consent banner. I just wonder where this ends up because it feels governments and the internet gatekeepers have a very vested interest in continuing to raise these standards, not because they have the heart of the consumer in mind. I don't for a second think that has anything to do with it. I think that's a total political red herring, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because if customers cared about privacy, they wouldn't have one of these within 6 inches of their body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So the reality is this has nothing to do with the consumer. This has everything to do with power and control on the internet through my lens anyway. And I've only been doing this 25 years, so what do I know? But the reality is I feel like the industry is bifurcating. I feel like there is some consolidation happening in the privacy space.
Yeah.
And as a company that plays so heavily in individual personalized experiences, where do you think this privacy stuff ends?
Yeah.
Or does it?
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there. The whole regulation and policy, I'll just say one quick thing and then shift to a couple other points, is that I just don't think the lawmakers really understand the reality. And so they're trying to do things in a bubble without the context of the shopper or what we actually want. Generally aren't great listeners. And in this case, they're just proving it out. I think it's a little combination of what you talked about and a bit of they just are void of the actual reality that's going on the street or on the internet. So though it's interesting, use the word convenience, Jason. I'd like to ask you a question and then from there, give you my take on what you asked, which is, so you said convenience is important and it is. That really spun up beyond fast moving consumer goods during the pandemic because you wanted product delivered to your door and wanted to feel like it was going to get there when you clicked the buy button and wanted to trust it was going to arrive, right? And you wanted it easy, especially when you couldn't go into the stores for a lot of different items, non-essential items. So what does convenience look like for you? And B, what are you willing to provide about yourself to have that convenience?
I'm not a privacy. I'm just not wired to be too much of a privacy Nazi where I'm actually more concerned about privacy with the government than I am privacy with a retailer. So I don't like the fact that the government tracks and traces us everywhere. I don't like the fact that the government has access to every piece of knowledge about me ever. I'm far more concerned about government tyranny, so to speak, just to put it in a contextual way, than I am any retailer knowing my age, my gender, my preferences, my previous purchase history, where I've purchased from before. Like, I will tell them if it will make my life easier. And in Mexico, for example, I know in America this is not a big thing yet, but actually pretty much in every country other than the United States, WhatsApp is the de facto
Sure.
communication channel for businesses to consumers. And everybody does it here in Mexico, from your local courier driver to your local supermarket to literally businesses, large, small, and everything in between in Mexico will communicate with you. Basically, if you provide your cell phone number, there is I've never had to tick a consent box.
Yeah.
When I give
Right.
my cell phone number to a Mexican business, I've never had to tick a consent box. And they just start sending me messages via WhatsApp immediately as soon as they have my number. So I think that there is a different perception. And in 99% of instances, occasionally I'll get some spam to my WhatsApp. But for the most part, these are business critical communications. Oh, we had a delay. Oh, we're in your neighborhood and this is going to be delivered within an hour. Do you need to redirect it, or will there be someone home to collect it, or whatever? Please confirm your order by clicking this link, or whatever it might be. And so because I live in a country, which is Mexico now, that so heavily leverages WhatsApp.
Yes.
And the fact when I go to the US and businesses there don't leverage WhatsApp hardly ever, I think, American companies need to be asking for more information from their customers, not less. They need to be inferring less and explicitly asking their customers questions. If you give us your cell phone number, we will be contacting you via WhatsApp with anything that's important to do with your account. Is that okay? Basically, I think it's so odd because as advanced as the US is from an e-commerce perspective, it's so far behind in so many other ways. And it's this weird dichotomy that sometimes I have better e-commerce experiences in little old Mexico than what I do in the United States. It's bizarre.
Yeah, that's helpful. I appreciate it. And by the way, I always joke that we're a sample size of two. So
Yeah.
don't bet your business on how you and I like to interact with the brand. But I think what you say, I align with, especially you mentioned if it makes it easier.
Yes.
I would have said the same thing. I am willing to provide information about myself if it makes it easier, or I feel like I'm going to have a better shopping experience, maybe be aware of product that I really want earlier than someone else, have efficient and seamless fulfillment opportunities. And the question you asked about governmental privacy and cookies, I think should be a moot question. I think should be an irrelevant question. It is, by the way, it was the right question to ask, but it should be irrelevant. And what I mean by that is, as a consumer, and we do a lot of research here at Cordial, and it backs this up, so it's not just a sample size of one. If a retailer or brand, and again, any kind of consumer-facing organization, provides value in exchange for that information, the consumer is willing to provide more of it. Period, full stop. And so I'm willing to provide my mobile number because I want to know, like you said, when the product is en route and when I'm going to get it. I'm willing to provide my birthday because I might get a 20% discount on it. The list goes on. I'm willing to provide certain information more and more.
Or even, sorry to interrupt, even I know that the birthday, even if I don't get some sort of bonus on my birthday, I know that they'll be able to personalize my experience. If I give them my gender, my sex, and my birth date, then they will know how old I am, and they will know I don't want to receive an email about feminine products, for example, because I'm a dude and I don't need feminine products. And if it allows them to know where I'm at in my consumer life cycle with them by knowing exactly how old I am, they know I'm a 50-year-old male, for example, then they're going to be able to target things at me that would be irrelevant to me if I was a 20-year-old female. And that I want them. People say, "Oh no, I don't want cookies. I don't want nothing personalized." Then it's not like you're going to see less ads. It's not like you're going to see less stuff. It's not like you're going to be pitched less. That is all still going to happen. It's just not going to be targeted, and it's going to be less relevant to you. So I think it's a misnomer to think you're going to see less digital advertising if you opt out of a lot of these things or you decline cookies or anything like that. No, it's just not going to be personalized. And so that's the concern that I have, is that consumers maybe sometimes have the mistaken expectation that if I opt out of all this stuff, then I'm just not going to see it anymore. That is so far from the truth.
It's far from the truth, and it's probably because they're not getting value from a lot of the retailers. So the retailer is using that information. The other point too is it's one thing to collect all the data. There's the other thing to understand the intent. And I've used that a couple of times because what you're seeing more and more, especially with the personal AI agents like ChatGPT that you referenced before, Perplexity, Claude, and all that stuff, is that context and memory are really important. Understanding the context of the consumer, where they're going, what problem they're trying to solve, where they are in their life cycle of buying, and the memory, what they've done in the past. And retailers have a really hard time with that. I will underscore the point you made as well about control. You used that word and that stuck with me as well. It was a couple minutes ago in terms of you as a consumer want to have more control over your data and your customer experience. And so I go way back to a time when I mentioned before, industry analyst. I led retail it was a niche analyst firm called AMR Research that got bought by Gartner for the supply chain expertise and depth of research. I led the retail practice. And one of my clients was a gentleman by the name of Pete Bigley. He was chief innovation officer at Safeway. And I still quote from him today, which is, he said, and this is literally going back at least 15, if not 20 years ago, CRM is the wrong acronym, right? Customer relationship management. He said it should be CMR, customers managing the relationship. And so for the last bunch of years when I worked at Salesforce, it felt a little weird saying that, given that was the ticker symbol. It still is the ticker symbol. And we were all about CRM, but I got a laugh, but I also then got oh, that's interesting. Customers manage relationship, right? It shouldn't be how the retailer wants to engage the customer. It should be how the customer wants to engage the retailer and what information is required to have that amazing value exchange. And that doesn't happen today. And so I think we're going to see a large shift because customers will want that value or they'll go shop somewhere else.
Yeah, and look, I think it goes beyond even just the digital experience, meaning that the digital in-store experience should be, and it still isn't, digitally augmented in a way that makes sense for the consumer. So if I walk into a big box store, I should be able to opt in to having my NFC activated on my phone. I should be able to opt in to being help with store navigation from my phone to an item or a category of product that I want to see. I should be able to get information from a QR code on the store shelves about either products or the categories and what are sold in those categories. I should be able to add those products to my cart in store so that either I can have them shipped to my house or pay for them in store and have them shipped to my house because I'm right there. I can just pay at checkout. I could check out, walk out physically with the items that are there, but I could pay for the entire cart, including the items they don't have in store. I just feel like this merging of the in-store and the online experience hasn't happened really meaningfully yet. It's starting to, some retailers are starting to dip their toes in the water of this, but it still feels like it's taking a hell of a long time. Why? I thought COVID would bring QR code usage full stop into the mainstream. I thought we would continue to see it everywhere forever from then on.
Yep.
And still today, for example, a retail store might sell air fryers. They might only have room on the store shelf for 2 air fryers, but they might have available 20 air fryers, right? And so why don't they have a category-based level QR code visible right there, even on a digital screen, so that they can swap them out, they can update them, they can update the messaging, whatever. I could click on that QR code. It could take me to the air fryer category, or for that specific product, I could learn more about, because there's only so much they can show at point of sale. There's only so much information. And if I wanted to know what they had available, either be able to dispatch from that store or be able to dispatch from the local DC to my home, just feel like that endless aisle concept, which we've been talking about endless aisle at retail for how many years? Like literally, I started hearing that term probably 20 years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago. It still doesn't really happen at scale at retail. And in a seamless way. And I just wonder, is it because retailers oftentimes have retail merchandising teams and retail sales teams, and then they have like digital teams, and never the twain shall meet. And so therefore, those in-store merchandisers or the in-store sales managers, whatever it might be, aren't necessarily even aware of what's possible in store with merged digital retail tech. Why do you think that is, and where do we go from here to make that a reality?
Yeah, it has been a long time. In fact, I mentioned Lids before. When I was at Lids in 2000, we did endless aisle. We didn't call it that at the time, but if you think our stores were 500 to 1,000 square feet, so they were tiny, right? And
Yeah.
so if we were selling a Boston Red Sox hat that was fitted, we might not have all the sizes, but we want to
Yes.
make sure the customer doesn't leave the store without them buying it. And so we actually put digital displays. It was our website. We reformatted for the store. In fact, I remember the big sales conference we had down in Miami. We brought computers in and each store manager was able to order a hat and we were able to do it. So they got the hat the next morning at the conference. It was awesome. So it's not
Wow.
a question of technology because we've been doing that forever. And I would say a lot of retailers are getting better at it. The biggest barrier is operational and incentives. Those are the two biggest barriers. I would also say the big paradigm shift, because what you just described, Jason, was all of this engagement happening before checkout, right? It was all about when the consumer's trying to find the product, which you would argue is the most important time because they either find it or they don't. But what we are so accustomed to in brick and mortar retailer is focused on the checkout, right? It's all about speed, efficiency, and period, full stop. Speed, efficiency, and throughput. We never want the till, never want the queue at the till to get too long, right? And so that's where all of our operations and incentives in the store have been focused on to a large degree, to a very large degree. And so what I've been talking to customers about, and it hits us at Cordial, because we have all this interesting insights that the store associate doesn't have access to in many cases, or the store associate is getting access to interesting information like an event somebody's going to, or the customer's occupation, which they might not have shared in the digital media, right? Through the digital channels. And so what we are finding is this paradigm shift from just checkout, speed and efficiency, to check in, which is about as exactly you're talking about the engagement when the customer is trying to find the product, trying to be inspired, trying to get service. And that is a shift that needs to take place. And especially around the holidays when you see traffic bump up anywhere from 50 to 100%. And you also have some part-time associates who might not be as trained up or motivated to learn all the different things they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that extends even to things I've often wondered, because with NFC, you can pinpoint where someone is down to the meter, right? Down to the square meter roughly. And I've wondered oftentimes in these big stores, they're cutting staff, meaning that they've got less staff than ever before to help the customer in store. Why don't we have in the app, this would be another incentive for people to download the app for these stores, is to say, look, if you need help anywhere in the store, you don't have to go find someone. We'll find you.
Yeah.
You click this button, need help now in store on the app, and we'll come. We know where you are. We'll be able to track you
Right.
down based on the ping sent out from your phone, and using beacons in store, we'll be able to locate you and we'll come directly to you wherever you are in the store. If you need help, you press this button. It's like a hotline directly to a sales associate in the store, and we'll be there within 90 seconds or less. And I just feel like, and this is not, I don't see this as retail theater. In some respects it is because nobody does it, but I feel like this is really tangible. I know this is getting a little bit outside your wheelhouse perhaps, but I feel like where personalization for the online experience and the offline experience converge, that feels like where the real gold is. Because if I'm authenticated in your app, and then I ping that button, I then going into my central data warehouse, I then know I was in that store at that time, looking at this item, got help, and then I will know from the time that I press that button for help, I'll know that the moment that the associate hits that person, I'll then know from the moment that person basically ticks off the button as an associate that, hey, I've dealt with this customer, I will know then if they go on to purchase in that same shopping session in store, I will know what they purchased, I will know how much they spent, I will have so much more digital intelligence about the customer if I show just a little bit more empathy for their in-store experience. And I feel like that fusion of physical data with the purely digital data that we usually have, that feels like a gold mine waiting to be dug up.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Because the customer doesn't think about shopping by channels. They think about the brand and what they're trying to get accomplished. And so they should be treated as such that that friction is removed from the shopping process, from inspiration to purchase. No question about it. And it goes back to the value. You brought up the app. And so there's a lot of discussion around apps. And if you're a retailer and you have the justification to have real estate on the consumer's phone, you should provide the value. And if you do, the consumer's going to use it some more. And so you talked about all the things that they could provide, and the consumer would like that. And many would like that because they would opt in for those types of services. And so it absolutely, if you think about the future of retail, whereas retailers had all the control because they were the interface between the consumer and the brand. And now there are a bunch of intermediaries starting to, or have been showing up, from TikTok to WhatsApp that you mentioned before, where not only social happens, but more and more commerce is happening. You fast forward to where we are now, and you got the personal AI agents becoming that entry point. And as you did looking for your 4K monitor, you didn't go to Google, you didn't go walk the streets, you didn't go to TikTok, you went to ChatGPT. And they're, by the way, creating moats. They want to keep the consumer in their eyeballs in that interface because they can monetize it, right? And so
Yep.
for retailers, certainly the app becomes important, and all of the benefits and capabilities and use cases locked in that, it really should become the remote control of the shopping experience. But in order to earn that remote control status, you need to provide enough utility, enough stickiness, enough value.
Couldn't agree more. What's next for you guys? If you were to look out 6, 12, 18 months from now,
Yeah.
is there anything you don't do today that either is being high priority for you guys, or that your customers are asking you for,
Yeah.
that you say, look, we don't do this today, in 6 months, we will? So what are you seeing as high priorities for the retailers you work with?
Yeah. It's a great question, and thank you for asking it. We're certainly staying on top of the various channels. So RCS, I mentioned, I think earlier, and that's something that retailers are testing out. We have our first clients going live with it and seeing great traction. It's a new,
For those that don't know, maybe just explain that in layman's terms.
yeah. So RCS is rich system context, or I think that's what it is. But the idea is the interface from a text is GUI, meaning it's interactive and it looks really nice. So instead of just text, you can actually engage in it in a more meaningful way and actually do actions within it, whether that is click a button to get customer service or scroll within the interface to look at different products. So it creates such a more rich protocol that retailers are embracing. Now, it's very expensive, not from a Cordial perspective, just from a carrier perspective. So those will come down as adoption goes up, but that's certainly something. But I guess if I think about our product strategy with AI, we're thinking about it through two lenses. One is the marketer agent, and the other one is the consumer agent. So from the marketer agent, we want to make programs, campaigns, journeys really easy to implement. Just as easy as you did asking ChatGPT where the product is. And so how are we going to help going in, like doing it with me to doing it for me at scale, with humans always in the loop? The second on the consumer side is, and we introduced MCP, which is a standard protocol that allows basically LLMs to interact with your own enterprise technology in a very trusted way. And so certainly that's for internal apps, but also for consumers. So you brought up, and I keep on going back to it because it really was core thesis to our research that we just conducted, is 1/3 of consumers are now using personal agents for research and discovery. And so through our MCP server, we are able to allow our brands and retail clients be discoverable when a consumer says, I'm going to a rodeo in Houston. What's the best boots I should buy? We want probably Boot Barn to show up there, in that they're our client, right? And so we're helping them be discoverable and found, knowing that's another key channel that consumers are using to find products and brands. And so we're focused on a bunch of different AI models, but they're really targeted those two categories: the marketing agent, or the marketer agent, and the consumer agent.
And when do you think MCP will become the standard layer between APIs that are, for example, So today, obviously, if someone wants to integrate with you guys, let's say it's an external service. I don't know. Let's say it's Klaviyo, for example, or whatever, and they want to integrate with you guys or vice versa. It's all through APIs. And it allows certain calls to be made. It allows certain data to be shared. It allows, for example, your data to enrich a profile property within Klaviyo that then they could use for further segmentation, personalization, etc. And so I wonder when or if MCP will actually largely replace the middle layer, because obviously we're still going to have APIs because MCP requires APIs to pull data from the core system anyway. But I feel like because AI is going to soon sit in front of or behind every single API on the planet.
Right.
The reality is we will need an MCP server there somewhere so that your agents can talk to the Klaviyo agents and vice versa in a more conversational manner without having to make the explicit API calls required to gather the data. What I'm saying is there's going to be a smart intelligence layer in the middle that's mediating those agentic AI messages. And it feels like we're maybe not 100% there yet, but it feels like MCP, Model Context Protocol, for those that are looking for the terminology, it feels like that is emerging of somewhat of a standard to mediate agentic communication.
Yeah.
Does that fit, directionally, does that feel right?
Absolutely. And you say we're not 100% there. We're not close right now. And I think you need some of the bigger platforms to embrace it. And we're moving in that direction. There's a battleground going on in that center space. Absolutely. And that's why we were so early, because we feel like the more our clients bang away at what we've done and test it and try it and see the benefits, the more we can advance and play nicely in the sandbox. I think it's moving in the direction of becoming, dare I say, a standard. We're not there yet, but there's definitely a battleground happening around how you engage with the MCPs and how you translate it. It's going to be a really interesting space to follow. I know you're bullish about it, aren't you?
100%. I think that it's because I play almost exclusively in the B2B e-commerce space now, and for the last 5 years of my consultancy, I actually think agentic commerce is going to come to B2B far before. Interestingly, normally the cutting edge commerce tech hits retail first, retail e-commerce first.
Yeah.
I actually think in this instance, it's actually going to hit B2B first, because the reality is the B2B purchasing today is still largely a nightmare, and it's very complex. And I think agentic commerce, and in fact, the Jaggers, the Coupas, the Aribas of the world, the agentic AI for them, they're already talking about agentic procurement. They're already talking about that. And so I think it's going to become the new form of EDI for B2B.
Yeah.
It's going to largely replace EDI because it's so much smarter. It's so much more intelligent. It's not just dumb messages being passed backwards and forwards electronically.
Yeah.
So I think it's super exciting on the B2B side. I don't still have 100% clear picture of how this is going to play out in retail e-commerce. I think anybody that tells you they have all the answers is either delusional or they're lying, because I just think it's too early yet to see where the consumer lands on this and whether they want agents to be spun up by the merchant for each session with long context windows, long memory windows, etc. And then when you come back, it respins up your own personalized agent. There's so many ways this could still go, and it's probably going to be a combination of several. But yeah, I think agentic commerce is really exciting, and it's the new frontier. It's the biggest potential transformation to our industry since the advent of mobile. That's the way I see it.
That's fair. I wouldn't disagree with you. And I think it is going to be a combination, but the consumer, going back to the control and convenience, finally have a bit of control here where we'll all decide who we want our agent to be or agent.
Yes.
And the retailers and brands are going to need to play if they want to engage with our agents. And I'm willing to, again, invest in my agent if it's going to help me find the best product, be able to solve the best problems. You got the idea.
I love it. Now, I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. I'll also drop a link to your website, obviously, in the show notes. Other than that, how do you like people to get a hold of you and talk all things consumer and retail personalized experiences?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Anybody's always welcome to email me at rgarf@cordial.com. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. If you see when I'm out in the world, hopefully you can just track me down if you see me in person and get a Garfy. So that's a call sign that a real creative marketing specialist came up with years ago, which is really just a selfie with me. It's not about me though. It's about the community. It's about connecting, and it's about being inspired. So find me on LinkedIn or find me in the real world, and I'd love to get a Garfy.
I love it. Sounds fantastic. Now, as we do come down to the end of our time together, this is where I get to flip the script and hand the microphone over to you. Let you ask me one question, any question you like. It can be personal or professional. Mr. Rob Garf from Cordial, what is your question for me today?
What's your favorite app or two on your phone?
Man, I tell you, I am definitely using ChatGPT more every single day right now. I'm finding oddly, and I've been using it pretty heavily for about a year now, nine months to a year now. I'm still using. Let me just actually look. I just got a new S25 Ultra phone, and I literally have just been migrating everything over the last day. And I'm just looking at my homepage of apps, which is always where what gets used the most from my homepage of apps is Gmail, Google Maps, ChatGPT, LinkedIn. I would say between LinkedIn and
Yeah,
ChatGPT probably get the most usage right now.
makes sense. I'm probably up there on more Perplexity and LinkedIn, but it's wild. Like you literally looked at your usage and just saw,
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
it's crazy. Yeah, I love it, and I love where the industry's headed, and I'm just trying to maintain that childlike curiosity that drew me into the industry in the first place. And I think if we can keep that, then we'll always be one step ahead.
Yeah, I try to learn something new every day, and having this conversation, I think I made my quota for the week. So I really,
I loved it. It was so much fun. Thank you so much for your time. Can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you. Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.